Hey, have you ever just thought that maybe you got the short end of the stick when it came to your DNA? Like you don't like how things are programmed in you, you don't like your weight, or maybe you have an autoimmune condition and you just feel like that you lost the DNA lottery. Well, I'm going to explain to you today why maybe that's not true. And there's things that you can do that actually change how your genes are expressed. So stay tuned. Hey guys, Dr. D here, and I'm ready to debunk some healthcare myths that maybe even your doctor still believes. So, I've always believed for a long time, like most of my life, that your genetics were your genetics. And we've all known the lifelong discussion about nature versus nurture. And, throughout time, people have been in one camp or the other that no, it's not really how you're made. It's more like what nurturing environment has done. There were studies on babies and whether they got held or not and how that impacted them. And then the other camp is like, no, it's actually really just your genetics. And so for a long time, I think that we've really come to believe, myself included, that my genetic makeup is my genetic makeup. So like if I struggle with weight like I have, well, that's just because that's in my genes. And so we've known that things like diet and exercise, and let's face it, we've all thought willpower, right? Willpower allows you to kind of overcome some of that. But, there's a reason why you end up kind of right back in the same place. And so we can blame our genetics for that. I'm here to debunk that myth. So in order to understand why maybe that's not true, we need to talk about this idea of epigenetics. So what's epigenetics actually mean? Well, to understand that, we got to go back to middle school science. I think it's in middle school when we learn this, but we're going to go back to middle school, high school science when we actually learn about chromosomes and DNA. And I just want to do a little refresher course for you because it's important to understand why your genetic makeup does not determine your health. So when we talk about chromosomes, so we all have 23 pairs of chromosomes, or 46 chromosomes, 23 pairs, and we have duplicates. We have 2 number 1s and 2 number 2s all the way up to 22, because sometimes there's little errors in those chromosomes. So maybe I've got a bad spot on chromosome 3, but my other chromosome 3 is fine, so I can still survive as a human being. So 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 chromosomes plus an XX if you're female or XY if you're male. But what's that actually mean? What's that mean in the real world? I mean, we learned it at one point, but how does that matter to us today? How does that matter to our discussion today? This myth that I'm debunking. Well, the chromosomes are our DNA. You might remember Watson and Crick figured out the double helix. And so essentially our DNA determines how proteins are made in our body, how they're transcribed. That's the term that we scientists and physicians use to talk about DNA and how the results of that DNA become, my blue eyes, my blonde hair when I was growing up, or my lack of hair now. All that's in our genetics, right? Well, this DNA actually turns on and off production of different proteins in our body. And that's what we consider to be our genetic makeup. And so for the longest time, I always just thought, well, if I'm going to have an autoimmune condition like psoriasis, which I have, if I'm going to have issues controlling my weight, which I've had, all that's because of just this genetic programming in me. And I might be able to white knuckle through some things to make that better. Or I can certainly use topical steroids on my skin. I want to throw most of that out the window. Yes, some of it is true, but we have to discuss this idea of epigenetics, because epigenetics means you're in control, not your lineage. So what do we actually mean when we say epigenetics? Well, here's the thing. Yes, our DNA is important, but how that DNA impacts us is significantly determined by our environment. Now, what's that mean? Does that mean that because I live in Indianapolis, I have a certain genetic code? Not really. More like the environment that I'm around all the time, like not just my locale, but let's say toxins that I'm exposed to. Let's say that I'm in a place where there's a lot of pesticides used on the fields near my home. And eventually, not hard to believe, that those pesticides will make their way into my body via, let's say, my mucosal surfaces, like in my mouth, or like my eyes are a mucosal surface, through my skin, and definitely through my food. So these chemicals make their way into our body, and then they actually play a significant role in how our proteins are transcribed from our DNA. So things are turned on and off by our environment, by our lifestyle. So what's this mean for you? It puts you back in the driver's seat. Yeah, I might not be able to move my family, some 5,000 miles across the world to get to a different environment, but I have significant amount of control over what I expose myself to. So whereas I used to believe, as a traditionally trained allopathic physician, that, okay, well, what you eat doesn't really matter unless you're consuming excess calories, and like eating organic really isn't that important, right? That's for just the woo-woo people, the tree huggers. But no, it's hugely important, because I'm putting these chemicals into my body, and they are determining not only which proteins get transcribed, they're also determining my health and wellness as a result of that. So what's that mean for you? It means that as you start modifying these different aspects of your lifestyle, you essentially change your genetics. You're not really changing your genetics, but you're changing the expression of those. And so when I personally started paying attention to what I was consuming in food, and started consuming foods that are not inflammatory, started consuming foods that bless my body, started paying attention to hunger cues and eating when I'm hungry, when I started eliminating carbohydrates from my diet and focusing on good fat and protein at each meal, you know what happened? My genetic expression changed and my weight started coming off. I'm still on my own weight loss journey, but my weight's the lowest it's been in 8 years. I'm down 54 pounds from my peak. And it's because I'm doing exactly what I'm going to teach you to do in this series of videos. So pay attention to this, because what you do every day actually matters. And let me tell you something. The body keeps score. So years and years and years of abusing our body, of consuming things that are inflammatory, of eating processed foods, of not going organic, it does over time have an impact. But that means that if you change now, going forward, that also has an impact. So I'm 51 years old. I'm doing things right now that determine my health when I'm in my 70s and 80s. Let that sink in for a minute. I think so many times we just think, well, you know what, like when I get sick, I'll just deal with it. Or you'll hear people say, well, you gotta die of something. So here's the thing, I'm not worried about dying, but until the day that I do die, I wanna be at maximum health and maximum wellness, because I wanna be flourishing, I wanna be thriving, so that I can play with my kids and my grandkids and maybe my great grandkids if I play my cards right. So yes, genetics does play a role. I don't wanna come on here and give you heresy saying that it doesn't, but it's not the role that we thought. In fact, they've done twin studies and they found out that 30% of the genetic expression in twins was seemingly just genetic, but the other 70% was based on their environment. Now tell me that that's not important. Tell me that's not life-changing. Tell me that that does not put you in the driver's seat to control where your health and wellness goes. Today, starting today, you have the opportunity to change the entire trajectory of your life. And so I just want to make sure that you guys understand this concept, because for me, doing my functional medicine training, this is new. This is mind-blowing, and I felt like it was important to come on here and share this with you. So when I come on and I teach you about thyroid health, or I teach you about weight loss, or we talk about depression, or we talk about lack of energy, I want you to understand that the things that I teach you to do, to implement, truly change how your body's genetic expression occurs. And so when we talk about things like fasting or caloric restriction, or we talk about reducing your carbohydrate load, we talk about exercise, we talk about cold exposure, all of these things increase your energy production. And as a result, they can not only help with the energy that you have, they can also help with depression and anxiety, because those things occur in the brain. They can help decrease inflammation in your body. They can cause you to cause your body to sense pain differently. So literally changing your environment changes how your body processes chronic pain. So if you're dealing with chronic pain, you're dealing with thyroid issues, you're dealing with skin issues, you're dealing with weight issues, you're going to want to pay attention to the videos that I'm putting out, because I want to teach you how to get control over that so that you're in the driver's seat, not your parents, not your grandparents, not your great-grandparents, maybe not even your medical provider, because a lot of doctors don't know this. They've not dived deep and studied this. And so, they might just still think, well, that's just your lot in life. You just lost the genetic lottery. And I'm here to tell you that it's not that simple and it's not true. So by you paying attention to what comes into your body, what you're exposed to, what chemicals you're putting on your skin, by paying attention to that, by limiting your toxic burden, by learning how to deal with stress and anxiety, by developing a daily spiritual mindfulness discipline, you impact your cortisol level. You impact how your adrenal glands are responding to your environment. And so if your cortisol is off the chains all the time, and I work with you and I help you manage that so that comes down to a better level, we decrease inflammation in your body, we decrease insulin resistance, we help you lose weight by helping you manage the stress of life. So listen, I hope this blesses you guys. I want to just tell you that if you don't have a daily spiritual practice, my personal one is I get up and read the Bible every day, do a devotional and pray. That has been life-changing to me. I look back on times in my life when I was extremely unhealthy and I was just burning the candle at both ends, and I was emotionally a mess and mentally a mess, physically a mess. And I just want to tell you that if you've not found a relationship with Jesus, I just want to encourage you to do that. You can reach out to me, touch base, reach me on Instagram, reach me on Facebook, whatever, come by the office, because I'm going to tell you that, to me, he is the great healer, and that's the start of wellness. There's certainly other things that we have to do. I'm not just going to be one of these guys that tells you to just pray harder for your health. I'm going to give you tactical steps that you can take that will allow you to implement life changes that get you healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Click subscribe so that I can keep bringing you good content. And please share this with your friends if you think that it will help them. God bless you guys.